Good afternoon. I know it's been a few weeks. I know I said I was going to be up on this motherfucker every week, and then life's been whooping my ass. But it's Tuesday. This episode will drop tonight. I'm sitting here. My kids are on vacation with their dad, and I am actually having time to just recalibrate myself and do the things that I want to do. Let me put my phone on silent actually before one of these kids calls me and starts messing with me, asking all kinds of questions. I want to talk about my business today and why I started sharing my life online. And I think it's just like a really good time to reintroduce myself and let you know where I came from. And here's the thing, people are always asking me why I care so much about helping women rebuild their lives. And the truth is, I don't think that I chose this work, right? I think that this work chose me. Because every single thing that I teach today, inside of Back to You, inside of my one-on-one client calls, in my content, I had to learn it the hard way, right? So before I ask you to trust me with your story, I think it's only fair that I tell you mine. And I know that we've done this before, but I think that it's been long enough that it's time to talk about it again. And I don't feel like I'm beating a dead horse or anything like that. I think it's important to continue bringing up these things and continue talking about them, because one of the reasons that I started sharing my life online so many years ago was because I was so lonely. I was so lonely, and I felt like I was going through things that no other woman was going through, and I knew like deep inside my gut that if I had these experiences, then there had to be somebody out there with similar experiences, right? And so let's talk about the beginning, right? I wasn't raised to dream, right? I was raised to survive. My childhood was wild. And before we get into the nitty gritty details, and maybe not even get into the nitty gritty, but I have a good relationship with my mother today. We did not have a great relationship in my late teens to my mid 20s, even 30s, right? But we have repaired that relationship. We are on good terms. She knows that I talk about this stuff in my content, so you don't need to be going sending my fucking podcast to her. She already knows I talk about it. We're on good terms now. I have forgiven her. I am not on good terms with my father and his side of the family. I have chosen to go no contact with them. That's a podcast for another day. Right, but my childhood was extreme. It was kind of insane. My mom and most of the people that I was raised around were addicted to drugs and alcohol. Very unstable life. There was always parties happening. There was always drugs and alcohol around. And my mom is bipolar, but she's unmedicated and was unmedicated for most of her life because she felt like she didn't need it. You know, the highs were always highing, and she would rather ride that high, and then when the lows got her, they were low, right? She's also a type 1 diabetic. And I remember distinctly at the age of 4 years old, she was pregnant with my sister. Can you guys hear the dog chewing his bone in the background? It's the only way I could get him to leave me alone. Such a good boy. I remember her going into diabetic shock, and me having pouring Kool-Aid down her throat and trying to get her to eat fucking bologna, so I've always been the adult in every room I was in, everywhere I went. I was always the adult, and I never knew what version of the adultier adults that I was going to get. So that meant I had to get really good at learning to read rooms really young, meaning when I would get home from school, I would have to kind of tiptoe around my mom to see what kind of mood she was in, and if it was okay for me to tell her about my school day, or if she needed me to shut the fuck up and get out of the room. What was it going to be like? Was she in a bad mood? Is anything that I do going to set her the fuck off, right? And this caused me to become independent way too young, right? And I was carrying responsibilities that were not mine, right? Taking care of my sister, changing my sister's diaper when she was a baby. I was 4, babysitting my sister, cooking dinner, making sure that my sister and I got up for school because my mom was passed out drunk in her bedroom, not going into school, pretending like I was my mom when the school would call for a truancy call, and I would answer the phone and say, yeah, this is her, this is Sharon. You know, there's a lot there that I had to take on as a child. And what does that teach a little girl, right? That teaches her that love has to be earned. Safety is not guaranteed. Emotions are dangerous, right? And that not to need anyone and to be strong, right? That is what that taught me. And so when I graduated high school, I didn't have some big dream, right? I needed structure. My life was fucking chaotic. It was crazy. I needed somewhere to go. I needed safety, and I needed structure, and I needed stability. Okay. So that is why I joined it. Really, it's kind of like nuanced. I had a boyfriend that I had dated throughout high school, and he was in the Marines, and we were talking about getting married, and he was like, you should join under me. And if you don't know this about the military, if you like recruit people to join underneath you, you get like earned ranks while you're in boot camp. So you like get a promotion before you ever even do anything, because you're like getting people to join under you. So I joined under my boyfriend, and it pretty quickly gave me the stability and the structure that I needed and that I craved for my entire, childhood. But it was also crazy because I didn't know who was safe, what was wrong, what was right. And the military is just like one big old boys club. You know what I mean? So things were crazy. There's so many stories that I can go into with the Marine Corps, why I joined. I needed stability and structure and safety. It gave me stability and structure, but not safety. It gave me a sense of self, though. It gave me like a sense of belonging. I finally felt like I belonged somewhere, and I was where I'm supposed to be. And I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change any of I was sexually assaulted twice. I don't know if that's going to get flagged on here. By my higher ups, once when I had just joined, and then once many years later at a different base. And you can't report those things, right? Because they will persecute the female, right, over the male. That's just how it works. I don't know. I mean, I've been out since 2015, so it could be different today. But when I was in, it didn't matter. It always became our fault, and we were the ones that got discharged. So it's not something that you could report, right? I deployed to Afghanistan when my oldest son was just an itty bitty baby, and that was terrifying and scary, but also like that's something I'm really fucking proud of today. I don't talk about my military service a lot. I was in the Marine Corps from 2005 to 2015, or 2014, sorry. My ex-husband was until 2015, kind of all jumbles together. So I joined, I literally left for boot camp the day of my high school graduation, and went to boot camp. Everybody else was going on their senior trip to the beach, and I was going to fucking boot camp in Parris Island. And 3 months later I graduated, and then that started the story of that. But I was in from June of 2005 to February of 2014, and it just gave me a sense of belonging, a sense of self, a family that I didn't feel like I had. There's a lot of trauma, like I talked about in the beginning, of my family and where I came from, and my family's fucked up. My dad was never part of my life. He was around in a sense of like, if you can say, he came around once every couple of years. He paid child support. When I was 12, I think, 9 or 12, he started paying child support. I think it was 9. And then I visited him like once a year until I started thinking for myself and seeing, the difference of the way that my brother and my sisters were treated and the things that they had. And I would come home and our electric would be shut off, or we wouldn't have hot water because my mom didn't pay the gas bill because she'd rather buy drugs or alcohol. And jealousy was there. I was a kid, and I would get mad. as a teenager, I was mad. And there was a point where I tried to get emancipated from my mother because things were so bad. And one of the judge's conditions to get emancipated was that I had to have health insurance. And I asked my dad and his wife for my insurance cards, and they wouldn't give them to me. Right. And that's like such a funny story now, because I was like telling my life story on TikTok as a series like 2 years ago, and I was talking about this, and it made my dad's wife so angry that she created a fake account on TikTok. You guys are gonna have to go, you'll have to go look, but it was so funny. Anyways, she created this fake account on TikTok called Justine Lies and was like trying to troll me in my comment section. She left like over 100 comments and was literally just proving my point about how they were neglectful and how they knew that I was being abused and not treated correctly. That was the whole point of like my series. I wasn't bashing anybody. I was still actively trying to have a relationship with them at that point. And then she just ruined it all. And then of course my dad took her side. And I went no contact. But see, I'm a tangent. I go off on tangents, but that's more like of a glimpse of my childhood. And then when I joined the military, it gave me that sense of belonging and the sense of self. And I felt like that's where I was meant to be, right? And during that time, we were at war. We were in Afghanistan, actively invading Afghanistan, and my MOS in the military was 0411, so it was logistics. And I was very quickly asked if I wanted to deploy. I had one son at this time. I was divorced, and I had just met my ex-husband actually, and we met on the range. We were at the range, and that's where we met, and then coincidentally ended up on the same deployment together. But my oldest son Joshua was 18 months old, and his dad, my first ex-husband, LOL, had beat the shit out of me. He had come back from Iraq and had gone through some things and was not coping very well and cheated on me multiple times during our marriage, gave me the clap a couple times because he was sleeping with his higher ups. I mean, I've talked about all of this before, so if this is the first time you're hearing it, like I've said all of this on the internet so many times that I'm not ashamed of this. Good thing you can get rid of the clap, you know what I mean, with a couple pills and a shot. But when I was pregnant, he was cheating on me the whole time. Then he deployed to Iraq and he went through some shit over there. It's not my story to tell, but when he came back, he was not the same person. And he beat the shit out of me. And I've forgiven him for this. I mean, we were 19 and 20 years old. We were so young. I don't wish any harm on him whatsoever. I wish him and his family well. I hope that that he's doing okay and he got the help that he needs. Last I heard, he's got a couple kids and he's married, and I hope that that is all going well for him. But Joshua was 18 months old. I was divorced, single mom, in the military. I was an E4, and I got a text message from my staff sergeant at like 6 in the morning. I was getting ready for work, drop Joshua off and get to the shop by 7:30, and it was like 6:03 a.m. and there's an open slot for Afghanistan. They're asking if we want to IA it out, so that means like an individual augment. So basically when a unit is deploying and they have an open spot, you have to IA to different units to get your positions filled so that you have the correct amount of people for the mission, the deployment, right? And so they didn't have a logistics person, or they had one, but they needed another. And so he asked me, like, do you want to go? And when you're in something, if you're not in the military, you won't understand it. But like the goal is to deploy. Like the goal is, I want to serve my country. I want to go to war. Seems fucked up in hindsight because I had a kid, but that was like duty calls. You know what I mean? That's part of it. And so my second ex-husband, And I ended up on that deployment together. And reminder, we had just met each other on the range. And that deployment really kind of altered my mindset and changed like the person I was and who I became. I was put on a female engagement team. Was deployed to Afghanistan on a female engagement team for the majority of the deployment and saw some crazy fucking shit. You know what I mean? Like, have you guys ever seen the show Lioness? It was like that. Not that intense, but kind of. I mean, I might just be numb to it at this point, but that situation and that deployment really brought out the leader in me and created a sense of discipline that I didn't have before. But people think that the Marines made me strong, and I disagree with that. I think that the Marine Corps gave me direction to a strength I already had. I remember in boot camp, the DIs just screaming at me. And I cracked a smile once. Not smart, went to the sandpit for that. But I cracked a smile for that, and my DI had later asked me, like towards the end of boot camp when you're getting ready to graduate, they soften up a little bit and they like ask you questions about your life. And I remember one of them, I was the house mouse for like a full month one time, and that means you just like clean the DI's quarters, and so you're like in there with them. They give you, sometimes they like give you candy, or they'll like talk to you and give you a little sense of their personality, like they're a real person. And I remember, I don't remember her name, but I'll remember her face till the day I die. But she was like kind of talking to me like I was a human, and that was so nice to be talked to like that, you know, like I was a normal person. And she like asked me like why I wasn't struggling. Like a lot of recruits, they like break down and cry when they're being screamed at, and they're like all, and I said, but you don't know where I come from. It's just another day. Jenny from the fucking block. What are you talking about? You bitches don't have shit on my mom. Because my mom was a screamer, a beater, screamer. My whole childhood, like there's that bitch would wake us up, and I say that bitch in a loving way, but that bitch would wake us up. She was a bartender, and she would wake us up on a school night at 3 o'clock in the morning when she got home from the bar because our chores weren't done to her satisfaction. And she would wake us up by kicking down our bedroom doors, and she'd be drunker than shit. And I never knew this until like way later in my life, but I didn't realize that she was drinking on the job. Like she would be serving, she worked at a truck stop, so she would be serving the truckers alcohol, and they would be buying her a drink right back. So she'd be taking shots all night on shift. And so by the time she closed down the bar and came home, she'd be completely fucking shit-faced. And so, and she was an alcoholic. She's sober now. But she was an alcoholic. So that was like her kryptonite. You know what I mean? Like she would come home shit-faced and just like beat the shit out of me and my sister and wake us up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning to get our chores done. And my sister was a little fucking bitch, man. I mean, she listened up until her dad died. Her dad OD'd when she was 12 and I was 16. And then after that, rightfully so, she struggled, but she turned into a fucking asshole. And my mom did not get her the help that she needed. So I was like trying to raise her and trying to get her to do the right things. And I mean, it was rough. But after that, my sister wouldn't do her chores or anything. So it was like, if I didn't do them, or like, and I was doing cheer, and I was in school full time, and I had a job. I was working 30 hours a week with my own job to help pay the bills, because remember, our electric and shit used to get cut off all the time. And I wanted to have a cell phone, so I had to pay for my own cell phone. Like I was paying my own bills at 15, 16 years old, right? And yeah, she would just wake us up in the middle of the night and make us do our chores, and then she would pass out on the couch, and it would be time for us to go to school. And so like boot camp didn't have shit on that. Like at boot camp, I actually got to sleep. The yelling stopped at a certain part, right? The other thing that really kind of changed my life was becoming a wife and a mom. Um, I love being a mom. I absolutely love being a mom. It is the most rewarding experience of my life, but also the most draining and tiring and thankless fucking job of my life. God, it's so thankless. These kids don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? And I remember after, so I had Joshua when I was 19, and then I got pregnant with Aiden right after I got back from Afghanistan in 2009. And then Aubrey was kind of an oops baby. She's the most perfect oops ever, but she was not planned. I actually was scheduled to go in for a tummy tuck. And in my pre-op appointment, found out I was pregnant with her. So, yeah. Anyway, so I had all three of them when I was in the military. And I remember when my ex and I were home for Thanksgiving one year, we decided to, like, we came home for Thanksgiving, and when we were leaving, it was like really hard. The kids were so young, his parents were so involved. Um, my in laws are the best people in the world. I absolutely adore them. They have always treated me with love and respect. And they were like bawling their eyes out and had, like, legitimately asked if they could keep the kids. And I was like, what the fuck? And so my ex and I were like on the way back, and we were just coming up on reenlistment. Like, we were either going to have to reenlist or our contracts were going to end. And we had both been selected for promotion. And we made a decision on the way back to North Carolina or Virginia. We were stationed in Virginia at that time. That it was time for us to leave the military and come raise our kids around our family. That's what we always wanted. We always dreamed of that. We always envisioned that. We wanted our kids to be around their cousins and their aunts and their uncles. And so we made that decision together. And it was the wrong decision. It was the wrong decision. We had a really, what I thought, and maybe I was in fucking La La Land, I don't know. But like, we had a really strong marriage when we were in the military. We both had direction, we both had purpose, we were both being promoted, we were both really successful in our respected jobs. He was a gunsmith, I was in logistics. We were both growing and doing things. We were following the path, right? Um, we spent time together, we did date nights, we owned a house. We had a boat, we had vehicles, and we weren't like broke. Like, we were doing things right. You know what I mean? It wasn't a lot of dual military couples. They like, hi puppy. They get like car broke, where they like buy all these expensive toys and stuff, and then they can't afford to pay their bills. We were doing it right. I mean, things weren't perfect, but we were really we were solid. But then we decided to get out of the military and move back here. And that was the biggest mistake. If I could go back, I love my life where it is now. I say I wouldn't change anything, but if there was one thing I would change, it was I would have stayed in the military. I wish that I would have stayed and retired. Um, and this is where the part where I'm going to talk about like being a mom. Being a mom is fucking hard work, right? And we moved here to the Midwest, middle of fucking nowhere, to this really tiny town where my ex-husband grew up. He was born and raised here. This was like his turf, his thing. And when we moved here, it was like he fell right back into step with all of his friends from high school. Everybody was so happy to have him back. And he got a job right away, and I was commuting an hour each way to work because I was the breadwinner. Um, and I just felt myself like slowly disappearing. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have anybody to talk to. All my military friends, like, when you're not together every day anymore, like, of course we were still talking and keeping in touch, but we definitely were drifting apart. And I just felt so fucking lonely. And that's when I started sharing my life online. Like, if you're an OG, you've been around long enough to remember Wine Night Wednesday. I used to go live in my master bedroom closet and drink a bottle of wine and just like talk to my internet friends because I did not have a singular, like, true friend that I felt was like on my side. And I just felt myself like slowly disappearing. And I was giving everything and I was working so much, and I was just so lonely. There was not time for us to be husband and wife. Um, it was never about what I wanted. It was always about what he wanted to do and where he was going. And I woke up one day and I realized I could tell you everybody's favorite color and what their favorite thing is to eat, but I could not tell you who I was anymore. I could not identify outside of I'm so and so's wife, or I'm Aiden, Aubrey, and Joshua's mom. Like, I didn't know who Justine was. And I just remember being so fucking sad. And I started sharing that online. And it was resonating with people. It was, my follower count started going up. I started building real connections with women online. And it was like, I was really working on like finding who I was again. And that made my ex-husband really angry, right? I was going to therapy. I was asking the hard questions. I was holding his feet to the fire. I was holding him accountable, saying, like, I'm not happy. Like, we're supposed to be a team. And he didn't care, right? I remember being at work one day and a couple people at work had found my social media. And this was back when it was like I was just on Instagram, right? And this guy, we were at the coffee bar, and I'll never forget, like, he asked me, like, so what do you do? Like, what's your social media about? And I just said, oh, excuse me, yawning. I said, society tells women that they have to, that the right path for them is to grow up, go to college, get a degree, get married, sometimes not even go to college, but we were in a college phase. Get a degree, get married, have kids, take care of kids, make husband happy. But there's no room for her to be her. There's no room for her to have hobbies. The husband's allowed to have hobbies, but the wife's not allowed to have hobbies. The husband doesn't have to cook, clean, do all the laundry, take care of the house outside of working, but she's expected to work and then do all of the other things. And it was such a lonely fucking experience for me that I was like, this cannot be fucking real. This cannot be my fucking life. And it was terrifying. And he looked at me and he said, I think that's exactly what my wife is going through. I'm going to have her follow you on social media. And I was like, would love to have her. And I mean, I went through so much fucking judgment. Like, I started sharing on the internet back when, like, the internet was, like, not super, like, I've been online since 2011. Like, truly doing lives, videos, putting content out for over a decade. Well over a decade. Decade and a half. Fuck, it's 2026. And people thought I was crazy. People thought I was weird. They made fun of me. The judgment was real. My ex-husband was actually, like, embarrassed of me. He refused to, and this isn't my first podcast. I've had two before this. I just stopped doing them. But, like, he refused to listen to my podcast. He refused to engage on any of my social media content. He used to tell me that I was embarrassing. And it was just like, what the fuck? Like, can I not have anything that just makes me happy? And the big fight, the one thing that was the end was we had gotten in a huge argument about my business, what I was trying to build. And mind you, this is after I had helped him start a very successful taxidermy business. I'm the one that started that. I'm the one that did all the paperwork, did the social media, I did that. He went to school, but I'm the one that started the business. He didn't even want to. Okay? But I supported him through all of that, and then I was trying to build my own thing while helping him with his business and working full time, being the breadwinner. Right? Because he was working his business and it did not replace any income. I had to make more money to support the household while he built that. And I was working 60 plus 70 hours a week as a loan officer, doing this, what we're doing right now, in my free time. I mean, I would stay up until 2, 3, 4 a.m., doing this stuff because I was trying to build it. And our last argument was him telling me that I needed to quit fucking around on the internet and be a mother. Mind you, I'm a great fucking mother. I knew that then, I know that now. And that if I wanted to pursue this silly little business, that I could do it after Aubrey, my youngest, so she was 6 years old at the time, graduated high school. So he wanted me to wait until she was graduated, and that I needed to focus on what I had then and stop focusing on building this business. And it was like a light switch went off in my brain. I was like, if I was selling stick figure, fucking popsicle stick figure things on Etsy, he should have been my biggest supporter. And he wasn't. He was embarrassed of me. He hated me. He literally hated me. He made fun of me with his friends. Like, I was the butt of all of the jokes all the time. But losing the life that I thought I wanted forced me to build the life that I actually needed. You know what I mean? So it kind of propelled me into this place of, I mean, I did go ghost on the internet for like 6 months while I was like getting the divorce, moving, and that year was fucking crazy. That was 2021, so that's what we're talking about, by the way, 2021 time frame. Moved out, went through a little hoe phase, tried. I wasn't very successful at that. Met Ryan. And I remember we were on our way home from a Cardinals game, and Ryan asked me about my business. And mind you, I hadn't posted on social media in a long time, and I got really defensive, and I kind of like bit his head off, and I was really aggressive with my answer. And he was like, I'm asking because I'm genuinely interested. And I had to explain to him like how it was in my previous relationship. And he was like, well, that's not me. And like, I want to support you. And if you're an OG and you've been here for a while, you know that he went out the next week and like bought a Cricut, and we started making our own merch. I haven't sold merch in a really long time, but I used to have like Hi Hello It's Me merch and koozies, like White Claw koozies with middle fingers on them, and I had this whole, and we made all of that stuff ourselves until it got too much and we couldn't keep up with it anymore. But he kind of propelled me into really putting my head back down and building what I wanted. And I mean, the imposter syndrome was fucking real. Posting online, like I was invited on podcasts, and I was doing all of this stuff, and it just felt crazy. I was being criticized constantly in my comment sections. I mean, I had a couple viral videos go. If you guys remember, I did the shit my ex-husband calls me for series, and like that's how I originally went viral on TikTok. But it became more about like people asking me like, how do you co-parent so well with him? And so I started giving advice and like naturally finding my voice and saying like, and just giving my opinion on situations and saying like, I don't want to have I didn't then, and I don't now want to have a difficult co-parenting relationship with my ex. What's done is done. I don't need to beat a fucking dead horse every time we gotta switch the kids at a parenting exchange, you know what I mean? But through that whole period, it was about rebuilding my identity and who I was, because for so long I was Aiden, Aubrey, and Joshua's mom and Brent's wife. But the year of the divorce, and with everything that happened, Joshua's hospitalizations, Aubrey's type 1 diagnosis, my grandpa died. He was my biggest cheerleader, my biggest supporter ever in my life. Like, that was a terrible year for me, but the whole year Ryan was my rock, and he helped me find my identity again and find my voice, and he held my hand through the criticism and helped me get rid of the imposter syndrome, because again, the reason that I started posting online a decade and a half ago was because I was like, there's no fucking way that I have been through the things that I have been through to not talk about them, to not help other women through them. There has to be somebody out there who needs to hear what I have to say. And you can call me vain if you want to, but I've got the numbers to prove it. People like what I have to say, okay? For years, I thought my story was unique, but then women started showing up in my inbox saying things like, I lost myself. I don't know who I am. I've spent years taking care of everyone else. I don't feel worthy. I'm scared to change. I don't know where to start. Then, different story, same feeling, right? People think my business teaches confidence. It doesn't. People think I teach motivation. I don't. What I actually teach is remembering, because I don't believe that most women need to become someone new. I think that somewhere along the way they abandoned themselves because that's what they were taught to do. And everything that I have built, my business, this podcast, my writing, my retreats, it all exists for one reason, and it is to help women find their way back to themselves. That's why I have the membership called Back to You, because every single day we're coming back to you, right? That's why I host these women's retreats once a year. Shameless plug. Got a couple spots left for Nashville on October 2nd to the 5th. You want to come? You should come. Join us. It's going to be great. It's 4 days, an immersive mindset, unfucking limiting beliefs experience. We're going to be all in the, we all stay. I get this the number one question a lot, like, what about lodging? Everybody gets their own bedroom, and everything's included in the retreat. So it's one price. You just have to get yourself there. All the food, the coaching sessions, the lodging is all included. Any activities we do, it's all included in the price. You just have to get yourself there. And the reason I love the retreats so much is because it takes you out of your everyday life where you're feeling bogged down and where you're feeling confused and you're feeling like you don't have time or space for yourself. It takes you out of your everyday life and puts you in a room for 4 days with other women who want the same fucking things that you do. And we create a plan. And it's so funny because sometimes we tell ourselves these stories all the time of like, well, I can't do that because of X. And the solution is, there's a solution for everything. I'm a firm believer of that. But the solution is always so fucking easy. But when it is something that is in your face, so close to your face that you cannot see a fucking way out, it seems sometimes almost silly how easy and fixable your situation is. But because you're in it and you're living it every single day, you're too involved. You're too close. And so my favorite part of the weekends in these retreats is finding the solutions and just seeing your face light up with excitement, knowing that you're going to finally be able to do the things that you want to do. Train for the marathon, get a new job, go back to school, write a book, read a book. Fuck, a lot of us don't even have time to read a fucking book or shower in peace. But there's so much space for you inside of your own life, but we become martyrs inside of our own homes because that's what we were taught to do. And it's my life's mission to unfuck that mindset of every woman that I come across, because there's room for you too, right? Well, this was a longer episode than I've recorded in a while, but I thought we should, just kind of touch base on who I am, where I came from, a little bit of my stories. Leave a comment if you enjoyed this episode. Follow me on social media. If you don't, share this on social media. That would be great. Tag me. I love you guys. Thanks for listening. Yapping on camera is probably one of my favorite things to do. I would go live more often, but people on lives are crazy. Maybe I'll try that again. Maybe I need some moderators on my lives. Hey, yo, maybe that's what I need. But I have an interview for a nanny for this school year in 12 minutes. So I'm going to hop off here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And I'll see you next week. All right? Bye.